quick tidbit for any of you out there who film stuff on your phones. You may want to delete your files before you film stuff because my space ran out on my phone. So that's why this is broken into 3 bits. But anyhow, going back to the doom and gloom end of the total fertility rate question, South Korea, 0.62. The population will come close, will go extinct sometime after 2100 at this particular rate. The number, there isn't really much else to explain about that one. Now, I was starting to talk about North Korea on the earlier side of this. 1.7 doesn't sound terrible, especially compared to their immediate neighbors in Eastern Asia. That said, North Korea has a very unique problem on this front. Their economy is very labor intensive. They do not have any technology to speak of as far as being able to add to their economic production. And the result of that being 1.71 is catastrophic actually for them, unlike the United States. They have to feed a very labor intensive economy in manufacturing and agriculture. They have no technological advantage to speak of. And then they also got to feed that monstrosity of a military that they have. A country of 26 million people has a standing army of about 1.2 million. And so if the population continues to go down, they're not going to have anybody left to fill the military, which of course is mandatory, particularly for men in North Korea. Kim Jong-un realizes that this is a problem, to the point where he was actually seen crying on national TV recently about the population crisis. It's got to be pretty bad if one of the worst dictators in history is willing to go on national TV and cry himself a river, literally, over it. The problem has to be that bad. I think Kim Jong-un is ruthless. I think he's a terrible person. But one thing he's not is stupid. I think he's a very astute student of history. And I think he's painfully aware of what this trend is going to bring to his country in the future. Now I think, and I think it's going to happen faster. Kim Jong-un is only like 34 years old. But to the point where this population fall will cripple his economy, he will live to see it. Provided that he doesn't collapse due to his numerous health issues before then. But given, a normal lifespan, he will live to see this. And so North Korea cannot technologically get themselves out of this problem at all. Most of Europe is in similar numbers. You're talking about Western Europe, you're talking about countries, from Poland to the UK that are somewhere in between that 1.4 and 1.9 range. This is probably to some extent why the UK has been so open to opening the borders and allowing pretty much anybody in, is because their population numbers are in near crisis mode if their total fertility rate is at the 1.45, the number that I'm hearing. So what is the solution for these problems? Well, North Korea, of course, is trying to provide services for parents. But again, given the sorry state of their economy, their ability to provide that is very limited. The North Korean won to the US dollar is like 10,000 to 1. Or something like that. I don't know the exact number, but in any case, it's catastrophic. It's almost worthless. And of course, countries in Western Europe have gone the immigration route, allowing people to immigrate with ease from those Muslim and sub-Saharan African countries that I was mentioning earlier, where people are plentiful. Getting into Eastern Europe, it's kind of a mixed bag as far as what they try to do. to solve the problems. Countries like the Baltics are very generous already with their social programs, as is Poland, as is Germany to some extent. But I think they are aware. It's on the radar, at least in some of these countries, particularly in the Baltics, where their rates are 1.1 to 1.3 per childbearing woman. Still, it's worse than mainland Russia, but by a modest amount. And the Baltics, of course, are sort of semi-developed countries, but they're not really economic powerhouses by any means. So this could threaten them, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, on a pretty sharp scale. If you're moving 10, 20 years down the road. Now, being a single person myself, I can tell you right now, these countries have more women than men. I will admit it's tempting. But I can't see myself leaving the United States, although women in Latvia and Estonia and Lithuania are absolutely attractive and stunningly looking and very traditional to boot. They're not going to give you the problems that women in the West will, or necessarily be that overly entitled. In the United States, as I've mentioned previously, the entire country is at 1.71. There are 3 states that are above 2.1. Those are places with more traditional families, and they also have pretty strong economies in their own right, which usually leads to a lower birth rate, but the cultures in these 3 states do lead to families, and sometimes large ones. Those states are North Dakota, South Dakota, and Utah. Utah's at 3.1 because of the influence, of course, of the Mormon Church, which has always encouraged large families. South Dakota, 2.7. Again, traditional Christianity, which encourages large families. The Dakotas are also farming states, so having larger families has often been a necessity in some of the rural areas because they needed more people. They needed more people in order to be able to maintain the farm. So keeping that in the family was let's just say, an economic necessity, and also highly encouraged culturally at the same time. North Dakota is just a little bit above 2.1, 2.2, but Governor Kelly Armstrong has mentioned this in his basic State of the State speeches, that they are producing more people, which then powers their economy accordingly. Population of North Dakota, by the way, just crossed 800,000 for the first time ever. For much of the 20th century, they were stuck right in that 620 to 630,000 range with very little movement. The oil boom in 2008 shot them up to over 700,000 again for the first time. But now they just crossed 800,000 for the first time in the state's history. Not caused by an oil boom, because the oil boom has basically ended. It ended probably about 6 or 7 years ago, I want to say now, in the western half of the state. So their population, though, is still increasing rapidly because of birth rate and also internal migration. They attract more people now than leave. Same goes for South Dakota, same goes for Utah. These states are not going to be hurting for people for much longer. Political power will also change accordingly. Utah will gain another seat in the House of Representatives in the 2030 census, so 4 years from now. They already have 5 seats. They're going to have 6. South Dakota just crossed 900,000 people. They're probably not going to get their second seat back this time around, but they will in 2040. North Dakota will probably do the same also in 2040, given that the population of the larger states who already hold a lot of electoral power are going down, such as California, such as New York. So the number required to get an extra seat is also going to decrease, particularly as the population of the nation goes down as well. So there it is, guys, in a nutshell. TFR, total fertility rate. I wanted to kind of go a little bit more into depth on this particular subject, and so I've just decided to do it today. And I will see you guys tomorrow. We'll see you next time around. Sorry for the chopped video here, but storage space on my new phone. I've not gotten quite used to this yet, so lesson learned. We'll see you guys later. Peace out, homies.